Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Case. You've seen him on Twitter with Case Study QB. He watches way too much cable news and corporate outlets, so you don't have to, and posts really good clips on Twitter that a lot of YouTube shows then react to. I wanted to have you on because you're actually organizing and launching a really interesting idea, I think. It's called the People's Gauntlet, and it is a little different, I'd say, than like Justice Democrats and these other groups because you're not really, pushing candidates as much as you're testing candidates. Can you kind of talk about what the People's Gauntlet is and what gave you the idea?
Yeah, so the People's Gauntlet first, what gave me the idea was I made a clip, video called "The Case of the Fallen Justice Democrat," which features Colin Allred, who was a Justice Democrat, and he was for Medicare for All. He did two interviews with one with Emma Vigeland and one with Cenk on TYT, and he talked about Medicare for All and how he was for it. But later on, I don't know exactly what happened, but he dropped being a Justice Democrat. I don't know if it was on his side or on Justice Democrat's side. But the most important thing is there was an article that came out with Democrats who were for Medicare for All, but later dropped Medicare for All once they went past the primary and went into the general. And Colin Allred was one of those people. So I was thinking, how can we kind of vet these candidates fully, and I was wondering how were they vetted by Justice Democrats. So I'm not trying to place blame on Justice Democrats because at that time they were a new organization, and of course everyone makes mistakes and people straight up lie. But I was wondering, how can we find a way to vet these candidates who say they are progressives and in a better way? So that's where the People's Gauntlet idea came from. And basically it's there's 5 gauntlets, and each gauntlet contains topics that progressives care about. So, for example, there's economy and well-being gauntlet. There's the justice gauntlet. There's the democracy gauntlet, domestic policy, and then there's the foreign policy. And just example for one of them is the economy gauntlet. Talks about the first one is student loan debt, and you could go to thepeoplesgauntlet.com to find out more about it.
And, to me, it's not just vetting them on, their policies, because most of them are going to say they're for the right policies. It's kind of vetting them on if they were to get in, how do they plan on using power? Because we've seen this whole debate in left circles of you have the squad and even Bernie Sanders seemingly now, I guess, trying to play the long game, giving their votes to things that they could very well hold out their votes. Yeah. And then there's candidates who probably don't want to criticize AOC or the squad while they're candidates because they probably are trying to get endorsements. So, to me, I want to know, it's not just enough, are you for these policies? How are you going to actually fight to get them through? What are your thoughts on that? Does the People's Gauntlet, test candidates on how will you actually operate as a congressman or a congresswoman?
Very good question. So I try not to lead the witness. I try to put the topics and I put a little description and then there's a question form. But how I want candidates to think about the People's Gauntlet. Think about if you're walking down the street, you're giving out pamphlets, you're knocking on doors, and someone says, one of your constituents say, hey, what do you think about Medicare for All? I don't want you don't have to have your policy book and 100 pages and you start reading it off to the person, but just say how you genuinely feel about it. Because the People's Gauntlet is going to do a couple of things. It's going to let the person who's watching or listening to you kind of feel how passionate you are about that topic. And then the second thing is we're going to be able to see your charisma shine through. We're going to be able to see your leadership. We're going to be able to see if you are not only going to go into Congress, vote for Medicare for All, but can you convince your colleagues who might be a moderate, might be GOP. In a fantasy world, maybe we could get a GOP to vote for Medicare for All. But we want to see your convincing skills. And if you're a progressive running in a district, and then there's two others we want to be able to look at all the different personalities of the progressives and say, okay, who's the best that's going to go into that we want to move forward and go into office. And hopefully we can consolidate around one progressive, that person, over a moderate, similar to what happened in 2020 when moderates consolidated against Bernie.
Mm-hmm. And what in terms of not only convincing colleagues, but are you willing to play hardball? Because it's hard to convince people who are bought off, by special interests, both on the right and the left, because you're not really dealing with them. The donors are pulling the strings. So how do you kind of determine through the People's Gauntlet, are these folks willing? Everybody's got a different definition of fight, but are these people willing to play hardball, to vote no and be destroyed by corporate media, the Democratic Party? How do you kind of determine that?
That's a very good question. Right now in the gauntlets, and they're pretty much static right now. My vision is that every cycle, I'm going to open it up to the grassroots members and say, okay, what do we need to change? Can we take out? What do we need to add? And then maybe Jordan, I work with you and other I call you guys progressive leaders, instead of pundits or whatever. Maybe we could work on a media gauntlet, and have a gauntlet where you guys have certain questions. Then it doesn't have to be 20. It'll be like, because each gauntlet is about 6 questions. And maybe one of the questions is, how often do you plan to interview with independent news? That could be one of the questions. But as of right now, I do not have that. I'm trying in this first cycle. I'm trying to make it as comfortable for candidates to do it. I'm trying to first promote candidates to do it, and then later on, when we add more in it and the idea becomes more popular. So the vision is, as soon as someone says, okay, I'm running as a progressive candidate, okay, I got to go do the People's Gauntlet. That's hopefully the brand grows to that point, the same way, Justice Democrats, Democracy for America, our revolution. Hopefully this brand gets big enough that as soon as you say, okay, I want to run for office, let me go I have to do my website. I have to open up a YouTube channel. Oh yeah, let me go do the People's Gauntlet.
And let me ask you also, like, broader than just the People's Gauntlet. Listen, I'm traveling. I'm covering a lot of things. The progressive movement, there's a huge chunk of it that's growing fairly cynical. Has some righteous anger, understandable anger. They rode the train of revolution with Bernie in 2016, 2020. Knocked on doors for, AOC and other progressives, but now those people are in office and, frankly, tweeting more than fighting. I'm seeing more and more. There's people just saying, I don't really care if it's Jesus running. If they got a D next to their name, I'm not even looking. For me, I say vote however you want. It's not my role to tell people how to vote. But, in the confines of what you're doing, how do you push a People's Gauntlet and get people excited about it if you have this huge chunk of the left now basically saying, we're not, we're done with electoral politics. They're all full of it, blah, 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 blah. What would be your message to those people? Because presumably they don't really care the answers if these people are running as Democrats.
Yes, excellent question. My answer to that is that the People's Gauntlet is not only for Democrats. The People's Gauntlet is for independents, is for anyone can do a People's Gauntlet, right? And I want you to answer the question genuinely. So let's say there's a Republican was to do the People's Gauntlet and say, I hate Medicare for all. Hey, do it and say how you feel about it. And maybe even give your opinion or an argument against it. So the idea is, as of right now, you would put up on your YouTube page. Now we're going to have a Twitter account, and we want to promote people who are doing the People's Gauntlet. And our website is going to change as people continue as more candidates. And we have our first candidate, Imani Oakley. The first People's Gauntlet is going to be revealed next Monday in premiere. And then once a week for the next 5 weeks, we're going to premiere a new gauntlet from Imani, and hopefully we'll get others on board. And the People's Gauntlet, the site is going to feature those people. But to answer your question again, this is a progressive initiative, not me, us. This is for the 99%. So we want to be as inclusive as possible. Like, so the people who it makes sense for, to just be honest, I don't see GOP doing the People's Gauntlet, but like Green Party, People's the Party for People, Movement for People Party. I'm sorry. Yeah. Any of those people can do it. So this is the first phase, and I didn't talk about this yet, but a potential second phase is how we consolidate, right? So let's say in a district you have the Democrats, Green Party, other people. They all do the People's Gauntlet. The hope is like a month or 2 months. Let's say 2 months before the primary, we want to be able, as the grassroots, people who go to the People's Gauntlet, we watch everyone who's in that district. We watch the video. Okay, guys, who are we going to unite around? Whether it's the Green Party that person might have the most charisma. Maybe it's this progressive who's a Democrat. Let's consolidate our efforts around this person and push them forward. Similar to, we saw it happen. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We saw this happen in 2020 when Obama consolidated the moderates. This is our version of that, and we're going to do it in a democratic way. And hopefully everybody's aboard that. Now, the idea is that if you're not picked, you have to be true to the progressive movement, that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to bow out. If we have to cut a deal, whatever the deal's got to get cut, I'm being real, because people say, oh, you got to be pure where you are going to cut out. Let's be realistic. People have egos. So if you want to drop out, people are going to say, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that? We'll worry about that later. But the idea is to unite around one person and move forward.
I look forward to checking out peoplesgauntlet.com. Definitely stay in touch with us so we could watch them and talk again as this develops. Thanks.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be more phases, so I'm definitely looking forward to giving you the updates on that. Thank you so much, Jordan, for having me.
All right. And everybody, check them out. Case QB Study. That's Case Study QB. Yeah. On Twitter. He's the one sending out all those clips of CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, you name it, all the corporate manufacturing of consent. So independent media who doesn't have time or the stomach to watch this all day could then debunk it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.